Johnson finds out. Here goes Kessie. Gives it to Sanchez. First carry New South Wales.
Given the success of National Rugby League, it should come as no surprise that women developed an innate desire to compete in professional rugby. We now get to see tries like this.
Play the ball too from Simona Taufa. Heron goes to Johnston. Johnston for the on the charge.
Tackles like this. And a whole lot of, well, drama. These are women after all.
Women.
But was this a good thing? Are fans interested? And will the women's NRL one day compete with the men's version regarding possible profit? More formally known as the Telstra NRL Women's Premiership, the rugby league in Australia has been booming. Despite the Wallabies suffering on the rugby union stage, the NRL has been flourishing, bringing in more and more fans each year. In fact, everywhere you go around the world, people know at least one player or team playing in the NRL. Nowadays, everyone is talking about the Panthers and their incredible dynasty, so make sure you check out our video on Penrith after watching this one. But the idea of a women's version only dates back to 2016. Back then, two sides, the Cronulla Sharks and St George Illawarra Dragons, played in a women's nines match, which served as the curtain raiser for the following game between the Sharks and Roosters at the Southern Cross Group Stadium. The Sharks emerged victorious by 16 points to 12. The following year, in March of 2017, the Sharks again played a nines game, but this time against the Raiders, defeating Canberra by a whopping 28-10, and the seed was finally planted. Fans wanted a women's NRL league they could follow. So, on December 6, 2017, it was announced that the inaugural NRL women's season would finally make its debut and would kick off in August of 2018, around the back end of the men's season, which makes sense given the fact that the women's league does not have the same number of teams or games. As the competition started, only 4 teams took to the field, declaring their interest. These were the Brisbane Broncos, New Zealand Warriors, St George Illawarra Dragons, and the Sydney Roosters. Essentially, it became a 4-team tournament. The Broncos dominated the first 3 seasons, winning back-to-back-to-back championships and solidifying themselves as the best women's NRL side.
Well, what a juggernaut they are. We've spoken about just how good they've been. They have been the premier side in this competition for the last 3 years. They continue their onslaught.
But simply just having one side dominate was not what fans truly wanted. So by 2021, midway through the pandemic, the NRL chose to add 2 more sides to the competition. This would slowly increase to 10 teams as of this video, and with the 2025 season almost upon us. Naturally, it led to more diverse competitions, seeing the Knights and Roosters each win the grand final twice. But where did this drive for a women's tournament originate? For decades, rugby was seen as a men's sport. But since the early 2000s, there has been a slow and steady drive to integrate more women into rugby. This kicked off more significantly in the early 2010s, more specifically around the time of the Women's Rugby World Cup. Players like Emily Scarrett proved just how good she is, eventually leading England's Red Roses to a single World Cup victory.
For the world champions of 2014.
Since the Black Ferns didn't make the final, and Canada's Canucks would be the losers, the sport drew more and more interest among neutral fans. It continued blowing up even more by 2018, when young ladies like Ellie Kildunne became a pop culture sensation in Europe. Meanwhile, back in New Zealand and Australia, a woman by the name of Portia Woodman was setting the world ablaze, growing in popularity as more and more young women said they wanted to become rugby players.
To get to this point, it's been pretty unreal. The girls have put up a massive game, massive tournament so far, but I remember my time back in 2017, and that was an unreal experience, and I can feel the nerves, and it feels exactly the same.
As former legends like Daniel Carter became more and more entrenched in the women's game, attention naturally shifted, and back in Australia, people were asking questions like, why is there no women's version of the NRL? Top broadcasting companies like Nine Network and Fox League would jump at the opportunity, clearly seeing a big payout, and the series would be promoted all over the country, drawing in some of the more hardcore rugby fans. But what about the state of origin? Well, the women's state of origin is nothing new. In fact, the NRL has been running the Women's Interstate Challenge since 1999. However, it never really grew in popularity. And with Queensland winning the game 16 years in a row, it didn't really have the same excitement as the men's version. New South Wales would double up, winning in both 2016 and 17. But the game was slowly evolving, and with the establishment of the official Women's NRL, it was only natural to create a women's version of Origin. This idea would finally take centre stage following the December 6 announcement of the NRL, and by 2018, the Women's State of Origin was in full swing. Over the next 2 years, State of Origin would slowly increase in popularity with more and more people tuning in. Players like Blues centre Isabel Kelly and halfback Maddie Stutton were slowly increasing in popularity, both on the field and on television. More young women dreamed of being like these heroes, and those who could not play the game became interested in coaching and even taking up administrative roles within the squads. It would grow to such a level that by 2021, it would be the first time in State of Origin history that every single player, coach, and even the officials were all women, essentially showing just how popular women's sports has become. Nowadays, the games are widely televised, and just recently, the Blues defeated Queensland by 32 points to 18 in a thriller that was seen by more than 26,000 people in the stadium. This would be the largest attendance of any women's State of Origin game, and it is largely thanks to Rugby Union and the World Rugby's drive to promote female games. Yet the Wallaroos are nowhere near as powerful as the Gillaroos, which begs the question of whether the Women's NRL is killing Rugby Union, much like it had killed the Wallabies. On top of this, it is also worth understanding whether the Women's NRL is actually worth it. One of the biggest and most lingering questions is whether or not it was actually worth it for the NRL to introduce a fully fledged and licensed female version of the sport. While initial attendance before the first official edition of the tournament was quite low, many believed that it would fail. For example, just over 6,000 people attended the inaugural Women's State of Origin, meaning that there was absolutely no way for stadiums and promoters to get a decent return on investment. Players also didn't really receive big salaries, mostly playing as a way of living out their passion. However, some clever marketing and the rise of women's rugby on a global stage have brought more eyes to the women's version of the game. Unfortunately, it is still not enough to pack out a stadium such as Suncorp or GIO Stadium in Canberra. The constant increase in attendance over the last 7 years proves that women's rugby in Australia is definitely on the rise. While actual profits for specifically the women's game are not released, the NRL generated more than $740 million in annual revenue for 2024. It also contracts 40 women, deemed to be elite players, with each earning about $60,000 a year. This is still not anywhere near what the men are paid, but it is a significant increase from the $15,000 they previously earned before the pandemic. It also proves that despite the pandemic setting back revenue significantly, the NRL has rebounded, now making it one of the biggest local competitions in Australian sports. With more fans also getting on board each year, and big rugby YouTube channels shifting their focus to women's games, it's no wonder that the female version of the game has exploded. Not to mention how good some of these women are on the pitch, and perhaps even something for the eye off it. Should the women's game continue to develop the way it has done for the past decade? Women might find themselves earning the same paychecks as men pretty soon. Global superstars like Emily Scarrett, Ellie Kildunne, and Portia Woodman have been great ambassadors for the game. To see exactly how, make sure to check out this video on Ellie next. Thanks for watching, and make sure you hit that subscribe button for the channel. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you back here at the line break.